hear the evidence against them for the first time, in a public court. We had a detective testify for several hours just about the events that happened that night. And, it all started with, according to prosecutors, Miles' longtime friend was kind of just trying to hit on a girl and was rebuffed, and there was some kind of quick escalation between her boyfriend and Michael Davis. And then as we learned for the first time publicly, we had heard this in the past, that Brandon Miller had been there that night. And we learned today that Darius Miles had reached out to Brandon Miller and asked him to bring him his gun, and that would be Darius Miles' gun. And so Miller had dropped them off at a bar. He did not go in because the line was too long. Came back, and the two suspects got the gun out of Miller's back seat of his Dodge Charger. And a short time later, the shooting happened, and Miller's car was hit twice in the gunfire.
And that's, I guess, where I'm having a hard time. With what you heard today in the testimony, was this a shooting or a shootout? I guess what I'm asking is, if he's being was he being fired upon as well? Was the victim in the case, or the person in the car with the victim, also firing at the ones who ended up being charged with murder?
According to testimony today and to court records, Michael Davis fired the first shots, and at that point, the victim, or the deceased victim's boyfriend, fired back, and he struck Davis twice. But according to testimony and according to court records, Michael Davis fired the first shot.
There's a lot, and I know it was talked about in the trial today. And Carol, thanks for joining us, by the way, having been there. You've covered, I'm assuming, criminal cases before in the state of Alabama. Is it surprising to you that Brandon Miller faces no charges, given the gun laws in the state of Alabama in this case, based on what you heard today about cars blocked in, handed the gun, everything else?
I think what it comes down to is intent and knowledge. And I'm no lawyer, so let me say that, and no expert. But the way I understand it is, when Darius Miles asked for the gun, wanted his gun and gave it to Michael Davis, he knew that, things were about to go down. Brandon Miller had no knowledge of what was going on there at the time because he wasn't there when he was asked to come back. So he could have, we don't know exactly what Darius Miles said to Brandon Miller about bringing the gun. He could have said, "I'm in fear for my life, bring me the gun," or "I want to show my gun to somebody, bring me the gun." So Brandon Miller had no knowledge of intent, that something was about to go down.
Carol Robinson from AL.com with us on OutKick 360. Carol, so just for the details of this that you've mentioned, so Brandon was driving the car. He didn't go in to the bar. The gun was already in the car, correct? Am I following you there?
They did not say that. They did say if the gun was already in the car, or if he's gone back to the apartment and got the gun. That we don't know. Because
I wonder if he gets the text that says, "Hey, come back, bring the gun." If the gun's already in the car, he's driving back to where he's just dropped off his friends. I'm curious on the timeline of that, or if he actually had to go pick it up and bring it to the scene where we saw the murder charges take place.
Right, and that is something that did not come out in court today.
Carol Robinson has been our guest. What is the schedule now moving forward? I know the judge is considering bond, but hasn't ruled on that yet.
He has not ruled on bond, and today was a probable cause hearing, which means, did the judge hear enough evidence against the two suspects to present the case to a grand jury for indictment, which is the next step in the judicial process. So at this stage, the judge could say, y'all haven't convinced me that they did it and she could just dismiss the case, at which point the prosecutors would probably take it to the grand jury anyway, which they can do. 99% of the time in a probable cause hearing ends with the judge forwarding it to the grand jury for indictment consideration. So she has not ruled whether to send the case on to the grand jury or whether they should get bond yet.
Carol, thank you so much. We appreciate the detail there.
You're welcome.
Carol Robinson, AL.com. They've been all over this story, and they continue to update the different and various reports from the courtroom as the live tweets were happening. What, around 1 o'clock local here is whenever everything came out, Chad?
Yeah, it was right before we went on air, so maybe 1:15 or so Central Time. Just a crazy story all the way around, and now that Brandon Miller is involved, which shocked us when we saw that and shocked the college basketball world. I don't think this is something that's going away, regardless of if Nate Oates wants it to go away and questions not be asked. That this is not something that's now I say that, and honestly, we move on pretty fast in this country right now. The Darius Miles thing almost felt like ancient history by the time this report came out, when he was dismissed from the team and Alabama kept winning and got to number 1 in the country.
Yeah.
And now this happens, and maybe I guess Nate Oates is thinking it'll just go away too, and they'll just keep right on playing and winning.
Chad, BetMGM, they are receiving a lot of the public money on Will Levis, not just to be drafted top 10, top 5, number 1 overall, number 1 in this year's NFL draft. 22%, the highest ticket percentage of those bets placed on the number 1 overall pick, 22%, the money's on Will Levis. Is this your nightmare?
Well, it's not my nightmare because it'll just, knock out an NFL franchise if they draft Will Levis number 1 overall. That's the nightmare of the team that drafts him with that spot if that happens. I think this is probably more of the odds are long that he's the number 1 pick, and people are trying to, he's a guy that we've read about that we think can, rocket up in the combine and lead up to the draft. And by the time we get to draft day, it's safe money in that if it hits, I'm going to make a lot, and if not, who cares? It's
like us, or me specifically, betting on anyone but John Rahm this past weekend to win.
Yeah, it's what we all do, right? You go and look at, okay, who's the long shot that has a chance that you can put a little bit of money on and win a good amount of money. That's what people are doing with Will Levis, I would think. I saw someone, I forget who it was, a draft analyst, that put out he had like 27 interceptions in his last 2 years, something like that, and like 7 of them were off like tip passes by his own team. And they said, here's 7 of them. And I mean, look.
Was that Mel Kiper who did that?
No, they should have been. I'm surprised he didn't beat the guy to it. He put this together. I get it. Like some of the videos, like, a guy, volleyball set it on a perfect pass to him into the air and it was picked off by someone else. Those things are going to happen. I can also point to a lot of other instances in games where he just makes terrible decisions and he throws bad interceptions at the worst time. It's not just those 7 that were, unlucky, which they were, some of them for him. Look, I see the physical ability.
Yeah, we're not saying he sucks.
With Will Levis, right. I mean, he's good raw material. But watch Bryce Young, watch C.J. Stroud, watch Hendon Hooker. Those guys are more than just raw material.
Well,
they have raw material, and they are quarterbacks. They are really good quarterbacks that have instincts, that think the game through, that are just better than Will Levis right now.
We are a week away from the start of the NFL Combine. And next week, he's going to win the Combine, Will Levis. Traits, the measurements, height, weight, speed, whatever. And the cattle prodding that goes on now with Bryce Young, how tall is he officially? C.J. Stroud, we get to see that as well. And, you start going up and down. The quarterback that's going to be talked about the most without much issue is going to be Will Levis. So be prepared for, if you want to place $5 down, I think the odds will only improve in that in the odds that he goes number one, not the opposite way, based on next week's results. It's going to be really hard for him to screw next week up.
Yeah, and if you want to draft a quarterback just by raw material, then draft Anthony Richardson out of Florida. He's way more physically gifted than Will Levis.
And he should be able to win himself some stars there too.
I mean,
right?
the guy is basically Cam Newton from a physical standpoint in a lot of ways. I mean, that's if you just want to go with I can mold this guy into a great quarterback because physically he has everything. Check, 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 check. You write a check to Anthony Richardson over Will Levis.
Well, physically like Cam Newton.
And I'm not saying he should be drafted over Will Levis.
Yeah, I know.
Again, I'm not on the Will Levis sucks train as much as I'm on the Will Levis is way overhyped train based on at least three other quarterbacks in college I've seen that are far better. Those three guys are Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Hendon Hooker. I think are just better than Will Levis, and they're better pro potential than Will Levis. But the guy's good. He's just not great.
Hit us up with your thoughts at OutKick 360. We've got John McClain coming up. We'll continue with the NFL discussion. We'll chat about the Combine next week. We will also dive into the franchise tag, which that you now have a 2-week period if you're an NFL team to tag your franchise player. 25% of the teams, 8 teams, used it last year. There are a number of solid players that could be tagged this year and not reach free agency. We'll ask John's opinion on that, plus coaching hires, movement around the NFL, what's happening with Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, and what's the next domino after that? McClain with us next on OutKick 360.
Another edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined by SEC Network analyst, ESPN. He does it all. Peter Burns joins us this afternoon. Peter, what's up, buddy?
I'd be doing a lot better if I wasn't 30 minutes late from the podcast and if I wasn't having to do it from like the meeting room at my gym because of the chaotic schedule. But again, it's just it never, when you got a 5-year-old and 3-year-old, all you got to know is that chaos is going to ensue in your life, and it has to.
It's just another day for the Burns household, man. You're all good, buddy. And look, there's been chaos not in your life. There's been chaos around the SEC in the last week or so. We've got Texas, Oklahoma. Kind of always figured they were going to reach that agreement and be able to join the conference early in 2024. But you look at it now and everything that has to happen between this week, and stuff has been going on behind the scenes, but scheduling, getting these guys ready to go for 2024 to get here. That's why I think spring meetings are going to be so big. But your takeaway of Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference a year early right when the new ESPN deal starts up.
Yeah, Trey, that was the whole deal. Like, it felt like we could really get into kind of what I considered college football 3.0. Like, college football 1.0 is what we grew up with. Like, old school football, just the way it is. College 2.0 or college football 2.0, I feel was like the pandemic and then the start of the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness. And I feel like college football 3.0 starts in 2024. Not only do you get Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, but remember, we get USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. Then you've got the expanded college football playoffs. So it kind of felt like all of this meant like, hey, in 2024, we're going to have a brand new kind of sport, frankly, you know, and especially postseason. So I'm fired up, and it means really a different level for the SEC. Like, you know, now we're not going to have divisions, which sucks, by the way. I'm not a fan of that. I understand why they do it, because it should, in theory, give you, you know, a guaranteed at least 2 teams in the college football playoff every single year. But this conference is good enough that, hey, I mean, the 3rd ranked team should always be good enough to get in as well, too. So, I mean, I would have stuck with East and West, but it helps with the scheduling a little bit more. But man, I'm fired up for it. I mean, it's but here's the deal. I'm not sure if Oklahoma and Texas are really fired up for it, because I'm not sure how good they're going to be once they enter game 1 of that 2024 season.
That's what's going to be the interesting part, because we're going to get Arch Manning, you know, in the Southeastern Conference to start things off. Now we'll see how he is during his time in Austin, see where he's at. But it does put up that point where okay, they might not be as settled in as maybe they think they are in 2 years when they join the conference compared to where they are right now. And Venable's trying to build his program. Sarkisian trying to keep things on track there. I know it's an advantage, Peter, to get them in the conference, but they might be joining the conference and hanging around that middle of the pack. It's not going to be just straight, okay, we're to the top.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, we just saw the difference in the top of the SEC and the top of the Big 12 in the national championship game. There's a pretty big damn difference, right? And I think that gap is only getting bigger. Now, I think that might be a little bit of an outlier because it was such a butt whooping, but still, yeah, I mean, the fact that if you're not reigning supreme in that conference, I use Texas as an example right now, and you can't beat the Texas Techs consistently. You can't beat the Baylors consistently. Well, what makes you think that you're going to be able to go into, Athens, Georgia, or Tuscaloosa or Baton Rouge and have a whole lot more success? I don't necessarily buy that.
OutKick 360 rolls on. NFL headlines with John McClain. He joins us Tuesdays at this time across the OutKick network. John, how's Florida?
I'm in West Palm Beach at the Astros spring training at the ballpark of the Palm Beaches, and I'm glad I came before they started playing. I've never been, and you get to spend all your time hanging out on the fields with the players. You can walk right up and stand next to them while they're warming up. I told guys yesterday, I said, in the NFL, if you tried to stand this close to a player, you'd get tasered. And here, though, it's so relaxed. They start playing Friday. I go back. We'll have been here 10 days. I write columns every day. We've been posting about 10 videos. All that's on gallerysports.com. And then I go home Friday, and then Monday I go to Indianapolis for the combine, be there for about 6 days, and I think I'll be the envy of all my media buddies because I'll have a tan.
No doubt. John, you brought up the combine. A week from today is when it begins, and it'll last through all of next week. We discussed Will Levis previous segment, and to me, it's going to be very hard for him not to be the poster child of everything that's great about the combine. I think he's going to crush it there because we're all going to react to the size of Bryce Young or what we don't see from the other QBs. And Will Levis is not going to have much to complain about in terms of traits.
The combine is made for the underwear all-stars, and there'll be a lot that do that. Now, Will Levis may go to the Hall of Fame, but if you watched him at Kentucky, you'll know he's up and down. He threw too many interceptions. And it's amazing how the scouts never admit this, but the fact is they couldn't care less about those college stats. They want to see them in their shorts and T-shirts throwing against air. That's like I keep seeing every day something's posted on Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson, how great he looks because he can throw the ball 70 yards to a receiver. Well, Will Levis can do that. Well, Will Levis, he's listed as 6'3", 232. I can't wait to see what he actually is because you guys know how they always shrink at the combine because the colleges have been lying about him. And the biggest one that everybody's questioning, of course, is Bryce Young because the Texans have overall pick, need a franchise quarterback. I'll be focused on those top three quarterbacks, including C.J. Stroud. But Levis should put on a show. He should put on a show at his pro day if he chooses to work out. Then he's got private workouts. He's got a good personality. There's a website, the 33rd Team, that's all former NFL players. I read it religiously. I'm sorry, scouts, coaches, former players. And so I like what they say. And they love Will Levis. They say he has all the tools. Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network, who I have great respect for, has him with. He has every tool you want. And so the key for Will Levis, go to a team where they can coach him. Because if he goes somewhere he doesn't get good coaching, everybody's going to blame it on him when they should blame it on the team.
John, who is the player, non-quarterback, that you feel like is the most intriguing as you head to Indy next week?
Boy, there's a bunch of cornerbacks. It's a great draft for tight ends. And some people don't think Michael Mayer from Ohio State. No, I'm sorry,
Notre Dame. Yeah.
That he's not going to be the number one tight end taken. There's a couple others that are moving up, and they all have great athleticism. But, I'm focused. Bijan Robinson is going to blow people away with the way he runs and the way he catches the ball from the University of Texas. I got another guy, Rashawn Johnson, could have started for about every team in the country. He's available. So there's a lot of positions that have a lot of depth. And I'm looking at Texans' needs, which is almost everything, but I'm starting with quarterback.
John, over under, how many team visits Derek Carr is going to make? What would you set it at?
I would say the over's 5. And because every team, well, let's face it, 3 teams are going to be able to get quarterbacks that they want to start as rookies, if not the first game. Anthony Richardson, whoever gets him, he'll be sat for a year. So I would say there's still some teams, including all 4 in the NFC South, who need quarterbacks, but I'd put it 5. Can't imagine he'd take more than 5. Things would get so monotonous. That's what they got Zoom for.
John, we know the Jets need a quarterback. We know the Jets met with Derek Carr. We also believe the Jets want to work out something for Aaron Rodgers. Does it feel like to you that Derek Carr is the backup plan right now for the Jets, or is this something viable that they may try to work something out before Aaron Rodgers comes out of his hole and decides what he's going to do next?
Kind of like if they've got to think about this. Do they want to take on that $58 million base salary? What does that do to their cap? Who do they have to change? You're getting a great quarterback. They hadn't been to the Super Bowl since 2010. He's been losing playoff games at home. It looks like he hadn't been working as hard as he used to. He's 39 years old. Now, if they get him, a lot of people are going to pick him to go to the Super Bowl. I wouldn't, because he didn't go to the Super Bowl with the Packers when he had the best record in the NFC and home field advantage since 2010. Carr is a good quarterback. He can make a difference, but he's got to have people around him, and the Jets do. They got defense. They got a good running game. They got a pretty good offensive line that needs to improve. So if you go for the goal for like this year and next year, you go for Rodgers, but knowing that you're getting a guy who's kind of become a fruitcake and a guy who is going to cost a lot of money and high picks. And if it doesn't work out the way you want, you're kind of strapped for those high picks. But I don't think anybody would blame them for going for the goal, because Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. And some concern is if he goes on Pat McAfee every week like he does, the New York media would crucify him, especially if he's taking shots at him like he's done so much to the media since he's been in Green Bay the last 2 or 3 years.
I think, look, I completely disagree with that for this reason. I think the world is so small now. The whole New York media thing is so overblown. And Aaron Rodgers, I think, John, at this point, thrives on people talking trash about him in the media. He goes on Pat McAfee and wants to say the opposite of what everyone's thinking because he wants to rile people up at this point. Now, that may be a problem for a team also, because he is going to say things to rile people up. But I don't think the New York part of it has any deal with it. Now, let me ask you this, though, about...
Hang on a second, Chad.
Yeah.
When you got more members of the New York media than any team in the country, And when he's having to meet with them, the negativity of the questions and things, that's what I'm talking about, a constant barrage of negativity, if indeed he deserves it. You know, if he says something to Pat McAfee, then they're all going to come after him. And the day-to-day putting up with all that negativity, if indeed it doesn't work out the way the Jets want, that would wear down anybody, especially a young guy like Zach Wilson, and that's why he's no longer the starter. He couldn't handle it.
Yeah, look, I will agree to disagree. I just don't think he cares. I don't think that'll bother him or be the reason he doesn't win in New York. I think the reason will be is that if he can play still or not. That's my biggest question. He's a year removed from back-to-back MVPs, John. Here's the question. We were talking with someone recently about this. If you're the Jets, talking about Carr or Rodgers, and the only goal is to win a Super Bowl with this group that you have right now, that's a good core around you, do you have a better shot at doing it with 2 years with Aaron Rodgers or 4 years with Derek Carr? With everything considered that you talked about, salary cap hit, every piece of it, what's the better opportunity to win a Super Bowl?
If you're going for a Super Bowl in 2 years, you got to go for one of the greatest quarterbacks in history. If you do indeed believe that he can help you reach your goal, you got to go with him because he is one of the greatest in history, and Derek Carr is not.
John, after Rodgers and Carr, how significant is the drop-off to like a Garoppolo or another quarterback?
Jimmy Garoppolo played pretty well last year. He got hurt. If you take away the times he's got hurt, he's pretty good. He's a pretty good quarterback. But if you take him and you put all your eggs in the Garoppolo basket and then he gets hurt again, you better have a good backup. And so I certainly wouldn't give him a big contract. Anything I signed Jimmy G to would have a lot of it bonuses based on how many games he played. That would only be fair. But he's a good guy. He's a leader. He's tough. And he just gets hurt. And you can't have that at that position unless you're Kyle Shanahan.
Yes, exactly. John McClain with us, GallerySports.com, the website. Eric Bieniemy is now the offensive coordinator and assistant head coach in Washington. He's going to be running the show for the offense there. What does that mean for Eric Bieniemy, John?
Well, he's never done it. And LaShawn McCoy had a great story that's all over the country. When he played there, Andy Reid ran everything. He does. Everybody knows that. Well, no, I can't say that because I see his people all the time acting like Bieniemy calls plays. He doesn't. And he pointed that out. He said he's not there in there making corrections. It's all Andy Reid, which is what people expect. Now he's going to Washington. He's got a great defense. He's got a really good running game, but he doesn't have a quarterback unless Sam Howell turns out to be a great, what was he, a fifth-round pick?
Yes.
So we'll see. Eric Bieniemy has done a lot of interviews, and he didn't get a head coaching job. I don't think it was because of his record. I think it was because people were leery because they knew Andy Reid did most of it. So hopefully it'll work out for him, and he won't be looking for another job in a couple of years because they got a good thing going on in Washington right now, despite Dan Snyder. And if he sells that team and new owners take over and Ron Rivera doesn't win, they're going to want their own guy in there, which means they also may want their own offense coordinator.
John, what do you think about the Rex Ryan possibility in Denver and just overall what Sean Payton is doing with that staff?
Well, I love Rex Ryan, who lives in Nashville, of course. He was always a great quote. I still think the best Hard Knocks were when he was the head coach of the Jets. And Rex was a hell of a defensive coordinator when he was at Baltimore, and they won a Super Bowl. He helped him get his first head coaching job. He's a humongous personality, as everybody knows. And Sean Payton wants somebody on that side of the ball where he doesn't have to mess with it. So I think Rex would be a terrific hire.
John, so looking around at the 5 hires that were made, we ranked ours. We counted them down 5-1. Chad put DeMeco Ryans number 1 as the top hire.
I saw it.
Hey, I cited John McClain, too, for one of the reasons I put that in there because of Denver's desire to have DeMeco Ryans also.
What did you make of it, and do you agree with him?
No, I agree. I think Sean Payton was the number 1 hire because he's a Super Bowl winning coach. But DeMeco Ryans and everybody else, he was the hot property. Everybody in the league wanted him. He told his agent, Jimmy Sexton, don't line me up with Carolina. and he used the preparation for the Cowboy game to get out of doing interviews with Indianapolis and Arizona, and he'd interviewed with Denver before Houston. Once he interviewed with Houston, he didn't want to go anywhere else, and the Texans didn't want anybody else. It's kind of a marriage made in heaven, and people are so happy. And spring training, where I am, there's a lot of members of the media from Houston, state of Texas, a lot of national guys have come in. Buster Olney, one of my favorite baseball writers who graduated from Vanderbilt, worked here at the Tennessean for 8 years. We're talking baseball and football in the Texans. So a lot of people are talking about the Texans because of Ryans. So I would put him number 2.
And John, when you look at, and look, I agree, everyone's going to have Sean Payton 1 other than me, but hear me out on this. If you factor in that Sean Payton was given so much power in Denver, I'm sure that was part of the deal. They had to trade for him. I feel like unless you're Bill Belichick, and you've had all that success with Tom Brady and haven't had that same success without him, by the way, most of the most successful situations in the NFL are strong ownership, strong GM, strong head coach, and not a coach with all the power. And that's really what you're going to start to have a lot of, I think, in Denver with a personality like Sean Payton. So given the comparison between the two, not that you think that DeMeco Ryans is the better hire, but how do you compare and contrast those two situations with what Ryans is going to get with Caserio and ownership in Houston versus what Sean Payton's going to get with the richest owners in the NFL, but also one where he's going to be calling all the shots?
It'll be the way it was in New Orleans, and George Payton, the GM, will be like a personnel guy, which is what he was for years in Minnesota until he took that job. And I think the main reason they hired Payton goes back to he thinks he can fix Russell Wilson. Whatever they were doing with Wilson under Nathaniel Hackett, he said early in the season on Fox it was wrong. That's not what they needed. That's the first time people started saying, sounds like he wants to come back and coach Russell Wilson. Well, now he has that opportunity. But tell you what, they've given up a lot of capital to get him and Russell Wilson. So they, I don't know if they can compete for a wild card this year. And it's going to be hard to build without those high picks, which the Texans have found out because Bill O'Brien traded 2 1s and a 2 in back-to-back years. But every great coach had a great quarterback other than Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs won 3 Super Bowls with 3 quarterbacks. Nobody else has done that. But most of them got to have that because if Russell Wilson's not good, Sean Payton's reputation could take a beating.
John, did you see the report that the Eagles offered more to try to keep Jonathan Gannon than what the Cardinals are paying him to be their head coach?
And Gannon said that, and I'm thinking the Cardinals must not be paying $4 or $5 million, which is what the going rate is. It must be less, but Gannon said he wants to be a head coach, so he took it. And I think that's kind of cool. I think it's very cool, too, if Jeff Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, thinking so much of him that he offered to do that. But you can't ever blame a guy for turning down a chance to fulfill his dream. And Gannon interviewed Houston 2 times 2 years ago, 1 time this year. They were very, very impressed. So as long as people in Arizona are not expecting him to turn around overnight, maybe he can get through to Kyler Murray, which Cliff Kingsbury couldn't. He's got a chance to be successful there.
He made the comment too, but speaking of Murray, that's the top reason he took the job. He wanted to coach Kyler Murray. Of course, he wants to be a head coach. But also something about putting Murray under center more often and not in shotgun. I thought the whole reason why you draft Kyler Murray is to use his athletic ability out of the gun.
If Kyler Murray's taking snaps under center, you're not going to see him. Maybe that's the idea. No defensive player can see him because he's so small. And that would kind of negate the quickness and speed he has to maneuver because he's going to have people right on top of it. But he can say anything like that right now. And maybe that's the way it'll be. He's not going to have Murray right off the bat because he's still recovering from the knee surgery. Kyler Murray's problem is not playing his preparation, and maybe he can get through to him.
John, and that's what I want to ask you about. In all your years covering the league, can you remember a quarterback that overcame the knock that they didn't work hard or they didn't prepare well? The only one that I'm thinking about right now is maybe Brett Favre, but I don't know if it was about his preparation or work. At the time, he was overweight at one point early in his career with the Falcons and got in shape with the Packers. But I'm trying to think if there's even an example of someone that once you get that knock of they don't prepare the way a quarterback should prepare or work the way a quarterback should work, that was able to go on to do great things. Can you think of one?
No. And the worst I've ever seen was Johnny Manziel. When Johnny Manziel was at Cleveland, I think he turned on his laptop when he was drafted and when he turned it in. And, if those guys don't study,
unless he's playing Call of Duty.
Yeah, if they're playing video games, so I'm supposed to be looking at the game plan. That's not good. You can't make them. And hopefully Kyler Murray will kind of have a new lease on life after blowing out his knee and getting a new head coach. And because that would certainly be good for the Cardinals. But remember, he wouldn't have been the number 1 overall pick if Cliff Kingsbury hadn't been hired from USC as the Cardinals head coach. He's the one that knew him well, had gone against him, and thought he could turn him into a big-time NFL quarterback.
Franchise tag availability is now open until March the 7th. The no-brainer tag that's coming is Lamar Jackson. Todd Monken, though, says he hasn't talked with Jackson since he's been hired as OC. I don't know if that's a big surprise, given that Jackson can, go quiet at times and can be hard to get in touch with. What do you make of that? And ultimately, what do you think we're headed for with the Ravens and Jackson this offseason?
If Lamar Jackson insists on getting fully guaranteed contract like Deshaun Watson, he'll be playing on a franchise tag there 2 years, and then he'll be unrestricted the third year because quarterback money right now might be $70 million a year. And so he can't go anywhere. What I don't understand, and I understand ego, but Lamar Jackson has been a great quarterback. He's a great teammate. Everybody there likes him. Me and John Harbaugh have a really good relationship. But if you could get $175 million guaranteed instead of $230, wouldn't that take pretty good care of you and your family and your family's family and your kids' kids and your grandkids and grandkids? Ego shouldn't figure into it. It should be what's good for you. And he doesn't have an agent, and I think that's working against him. And I hope they re-sign him. But, they're thinking, okay, he's been hurt the last 2 years. He's won one playoff game. And are we going to commit that kind of money to any player? I don't see him doing it. If they were going to do it, they would have already done it.
Do you think there will be a point where they have to decide whether or not, hey, we're just not going to get this guy under a contract. We're not going to be able to agree to this. Do you see Lamar Jackson playing somewhere else in the near future within the tag restriction years, the next 2 seasons?
I think there's, Jonathan, if he gets hurt again this season, 3 years in a row, then instead of sticking him with a tag a second year, even though it's manageable, I could see them trying to trade him. But who else is going to give him that kind of money after 3 consecutive injured seasons?
Yeah, the injury.
Nobody.
Yeah, the injury plays a big factor in all that, in that scenario.
And it does. If he'd have been healthy the whole time, maybe. But they know things about him nobody else knows. And they don't want to set a precedent like the Browns did. The highest cap figure in NFL history for the next 4 years is going to be Deshaun Watson's $56 million. Other players are going to have to suffer financially because of that contract.
And there's never been a cap hit that's exceeded $39 million, and his is going to be 55 plus over. And you're right, through 2026, it's every year the same exact amount.
I think they may, excuse me, John,
yeah.
but I think they would redo that if he plays well this year.
Yeah,
and they're threatening the playoffs or get back in the playoffs. I could see them wanting to extend him. He's got to make sure to stay out of trouble. He has things from the league that guarantee counseling, and if he wants a massage, he's got to get it from the club. And if he adheres to those, then I could see them redoing his contract and lowering that cap figure because that's a killer.
It's brutal. John, give us an idea of what's coming to Gallery Sports from the Combine next week.
I have a column right now on Astros slugger Yordan Alvarez and his sore hand. I've got one of Framber Valdez, who is replacing Justin Verlander as their ace. I've got him on Jeremy Pena, Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve. If you're a baseball fan, Florida and Arizona are in heaven. And from my radio station website, I'm at sportsradio610.com. I'm going to be writing about the Combine and previewing Texans. So check them out, because both of them, gallerysports.com, is free, as Mattress Mac likes to say.
Chad, have you been to spring training?
I have. I went to a Marlins Cardinals spring training game, probably 2003. I had a buddy whose dad lived in Jupiter, Florida, and that's where their spring training was. And it's very cool. And John, I mean, you know this now. You're seeing it, but it's so informal. Like, you feel like you could walk on the field at spring training when they're warming up. Like, you just walk right up to guys, chatting, stretching, getting loose before a game. Everything's right there. It's great
like
access.
A golf course almost?
Yeah, very much so.
I took 2 pictures yesterday where Framber Valdez is doing a bullpen session, and I was standing on the fence like this. Had I wanted to reach out and grab him, I could have. Of course, I didn't. But being able to be close to ball players when they're actually working is a whole lot different than if you're in the locker room waiting for them to get out of the shower so you can interview them.
And kids love it. Like, kids will line up, and they get everything signed they want. I mean, there's not many there, so you just line up on the fence, and guys will go over and sign things for kids all day long, which is really cool.
There's a 71-year-old rookie here, and he's not getting autographs, but he feels like a kid, and that would be me.
There you go.
Enjoy it, John. Love having you on. We appreciate it. There's John McClain. You can follow him on social at McClain_on_NFL. So we mentioned Lamar Jackson as the potential no-brainer tag, right? There are some other players that are really interesting, especially with how the league is going to view the crop of rookie running backs versus 2 guys in particular that have put up some big numbers in a prove-it type year for teams that probably wish they had the opportunity to get them under contract long-term, may have to tag them, or they'll have to move on and go through the draft. We'll discuss that. Plus, a grim decision, Chad, when it comes to a potential or a casket decision.
This story would make me want to pull my loved one out of a casket if I saw them lowered in this casket.
Okay. My mind is racing now.
That's the tease. That's it. That's the tease.
This is OutKick 360.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I have been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper rational. They looked at the data and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
OutKick 360 rolling on. Coming up, we've got Dane Bradshaw. He'll join us in hour number 3. Talk some SEC hoops.
Hutton, how about this breaking news from Andrew Marchand? Something I said a week ago has come true.
Okay.
News. Apple TV Plus has emerged as a potential landing spot for the Pac-12 in their negotiations.
And it's...
I said Apple or Amazon are the only two with enough money that could get them anywhere close to where they want to go.
And it's
but
based on the
my
Disney
question
comment.
would be, is it really a good return on investment for Apple TV Plus or Amazon? But then I see what these streaming services spend, and I'm thinking, I don't even know if they care about making a profit. I mean, most of them spend so much, they haven't made money yet. I mean, they're just throwing money at projects left and right.
And that's what Disney was doing with sports acquisition.
Yeah.
And recently, I think we discussed this last
Disney
Friday.
CEO said we got to be very selective about what we buy now.
Which is NFL and
sports.
SEC.
Yeah.
Pretty much. For the exclusive
I think their
rights.
tennis coverage is going to go away. I mean, I think a lot of things they spend. It's not just think about all the different properties that you know, Disney, ABC, ESPN owns, and they're going to get selective about that. I think with what Apple's doing with MLS, with what they're doing with baseball, we talked about it with MLB also. If these regional cable companies go away, could an Apple or Amazon start spending money on individual MLB teams to carry all their games?
Yeah.
So if they got the Dodgers, let's say, or the Cardinals, or whatever it may be, and every Cardinals or Dodgers game was on there for a select package for monthly subscription to Cardinals and Dodgers fans, I think that could be profitable, depending on what the price tag is. So maybe that's the direction these things go. But again, the story from Andrew Marchand at the Marchand.
I say Marchand.
Marchand, we'll go with yours. At the New York Post is that Apple has emerged as a potential landing spot for Pac-12.
I wonder.
Give the thumbs up, by the way. It is Marchand.
It's Marchand, good. Yeah. I wonder what's going to happen.
I was going with the French pronunciation. Sorry. I'm way too evolved for you guys. It's Marchand in French, okay?
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Say it. Say it the way you want to say it.
It's Marchand.
I'm intrigued by Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley and what the two franchises do with the franchise tag option, because they had the option to pick up the 5th year on Josh Jacobs and didn't. Tag for a running back now is just a tad over $10 million. Do you go the rookie route, or do you go with the back who performed extremely well in Las Vegas with Josh McDaniels? And then on the flip side, we saw a career high in rushing yards for Saquon Barkley, who was a big part of that offense, and he was healthy. It's a risk, but it may be the best risk/reward you can have, unless you're going to extend long-term, is to take the $10 million and slap it on the franchise tag for the running back spot, especially for those two teams, and then see what happens moving forward for the quarterback spot and elsewhere. Daniel Jones is going to get paid. Upwards of, $40 million per season was the expected report that I saw out there over the weekend.
He wants $45 million. That's what the report is from his. He just recently switched to Athletes First from his agency, and he wants $45 million. Don't know that he's going to get that, but that's what they're seeking.
I tag Saquon and work out a long-term extension with Daniel Jones. Personally.
Daniel Jones is more important. All right, this oftentimes become the debate of when you have a great running back, who's more important to your offense, this great running back or this above-average good quarterback? And I will argue every time the above-average good quarterback, if he's right for your franchise, is more important than a great running back. So lock up Daniel Jones long-term. I'm with you. Franchise Saquon Barkley. The two together, it's important. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to diminish the importance of those two playing together in the same backfield, but quarterback always more important.
But from the Giants' perspective, you want to allocate that money in the backfield or allocate it somewhere else and allow more weapons around your quarterback and go get a running back in the draft, the same way the Jets did, where they hit on Breece Hall. And you have one of the top rookies who ended up getting hurt with the Achilles injury.
Yeah.
But
crazy. There's too many examples, Hutton, of teams that find really good running back options mid to late rounds of a draft, or it can pick someone up and they're productive. You don't have as many stories with quarterback in the NFL.
Chad, there's a grandmother named Mary Esther Stocks Martin Gailey who was buried in a casket of the blue M&M.
Got a picture of it. I'll quickly chime in. This is a horrific idea.
Yeah.
This is disrespecting this lady's life by doing this. I don't care how much she liked M&Ms. Don't do it.
And the family's dressed as M&Ms.
Yeah, if I have dementia, lose my mind in any way, and I say I want to be an M&M when I die, I want my family to not honor that wish. I say that now publicly.
Aaron Rodgers and the Packers with Ryan Wood next.
college football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the final hours here of the Tuesday edition. Glad you're with us across the OutKick Network. Hutton and Withrow with you. One of the bigger stories going into the NFL offseason yet again is the future for Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. We await Rodgers' reaction from the darkness retreat that we've all been discussing and trying to figure out what it's all about and the visions, Chad, that may come of that. Rodgers.
Should we do a show just completely in darkness and just tack on enough of those shows in a row to equal 4 days and see what happens to us?
We could try. Maybe we'll hallucinate as well.
Some that watch the show may prefer complete darkness on at least one half of this desk.
Ryan Wood joins us. He's the Packers beat writer for USA Today. And Ryan, thank you for the time. I think a lot of the a lot of the perspective has been from that of Aaron Rodgers. What is Aaron Rodgers going to decide? Instead of what's Green Bay and the organization thinking, as yet again, they're trying to figure out the future at quarterback in an offseason where, I mean, they gave him a big bump last year. What do you think the perspective is from the front office right now?
Well, first of all, guys, I just have to say I'm happy to be sitting in the light, although it's Green Bay in February, so we only see the sun for like 5 minutes at a time, and then it goes away. But no, Aaron Rodgers said multiple times late in the season that it's got to be a mutual decision. And we'd never heard that before. We never heard Aaron Rodgers say, the Packers got to want me back too. And even as late as right after the Detroit Lions loss in the finale, he spent a lot of time talking about, it'd be slightly egotistical of me if I was to think that it's a done deal that the Packers want me back with Jordan Love, having waited for 3 seasons. So that gives us a different type of feel as far as this offseason, because it is much more than it ever has been. Not just does Aaron Rodgers want to be back wearing the G on his helmet, but do the Packers want him back as well?
Was this always a one-year deal? Do you get that sense that based on the way he treated answering those questions at the end of the season?
Back in July when the season was about to start and he was talking about the extension, he said he definitely thought that he would finish his career with the Packers after signing this past extension. Now, he referred to it as kind of a 1 plus a 1 plus another. So he made it very clear at the onset after signing the extension last March that, yes, this is going to be a yearly thing. I mean, it's so eerily reminiscent to the end of the Brett Favre era, where it was year after year, like Groundhog's Day, fitting since, Aaron Rodgers has spent 4 days in darkness, is going to try to see his shadow now. But it's going to be that way whether he's back in Green Bay for 2023 or not. The next offseason is going to be the same thing. So it's been a bit of a decline in certitude that Aaron Rodgers is going to be back, because he said he definitely sees himself finishing his career with the Packers and now is definitely not saying that. But whatever the case may be, it's a spring and offseason of a certainty every year that he's here from now on.
Ryan Wood with us, Packers beat writer for USA Today. Let's assume that he emerges from the cave or the yurt or the tent and says, I want to stay in Green Bay. Packers are my team. I saw the vision. What would happen at that point if he put the Packers on the spot like that?
We don't know. That's the great mystery. The Packers are being very tight-lipped, as is their way with this. But the murmurs that you do hear, a trade is a very real possibility this offseason. The things that I've heard from people around the organization is that they have a lot of confidence in Jordan Love. Some of this is kind of contradictory, because let's play the scenario out. If they have a lot of confidence in Jordan Love, why not play Jordan Love when Aaron Rodgers broke his thumb on his throwing hand week 5 against the Giants? Why not? The only thing that thumb needed was rest and to heal. If you have a lot of confidence in Jordan Love, why not trot him out there and see what he can do? With that said, in the 26 snaps that Jordan Love did get last year, he looked like a different quarterback. He was crisp. He was on time. He was accurate. He was athletic in a way that we just hadn't seen in his first 2 years. So you can see, even albeit a very small sample size, that there's some reason to believe that there's upside there. If he's drafted in the first round for a reason. Do the Packers, are they open to trading Aaron Rodgers? Certainly the key word being open, yes. I mean, this is something that they're mulling in their front office. Does that mean they will? That's what we have to see.
What's Aaron Rodgers' relationship like with media in Green Bay with the Packers that covers that team?
It's been just fine over the years. I've never had an issue with Aaron Rodgers. In fact, he's always been very expansive and trying to answer questions thoughtfully. And Wednesdays is when he speaks in Green Bay, and it's always a day that you're going to get some substantive material out of whatever he has to say. Now, the national attention that he gets from time to time, the weekly appearances on Pat McAfee show, that's nothing but Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. I mean, that is a complete circus, and it can go all over the place at times. But he is a thoughtful guy. There's no question about that. Even if he's not always correct, he's someone that puts a great deal of intention to everything he says and everything he does.
Does media coverage ever affect his play? I asked that because Tiki Barber recently said that he's, too sensitive basically for New York media if he goes there, and what he says is going to get attacked, and that's not going to be a good fit for him. I completely disagree, because I think if you're the quarterback of the Packers, you're covered by everyone nationally anyways. And I know there's more media in New York than Green Bay, but from your dealings with him, do you feel like he's ever affected by media coverage, and does that coverage affect his play in any way? And let's also look at that if he goes to New York, how that would look.
If anything, historically, it's had a very positive effect for him. When he is doubted, when he is counted out, historically, he responds. You make Aaron Rodgers angry, and you don't want to be the team on the schedule playing them the next week. What affects his play more than anything at this point is that he's going into his age 40 season. He's a guy that had 3 different injuries last year. He's had 2 seasons in his career truncated by broken collarbones, 1 on each shoulder. He's an aging quarterback, and the mobility at this point is pretty much gone. I mean, he just had his first season ever with fewer than 100 rushing yards. There was a time that you never would have imagined that Aaron Rodgers would have hit 100 yards. He did it in 17 games. He actually played an extra game this season because last year, of course, he missed a game because of the COVID-19 situation. So at this point, this is not Aaron Rodgers circa 2011. This is a different guy. The media coverage, does that affect it? I think that's ancillary at best. I think what affects it is Father Time, and the fact that Father Time is undefeated.
Ryan Wood, our guest, he covers the Packers for USA Today. What do the parameters of a trade for Aaron Rodgers look like? I'm sure that's been a big discussion point in your coverage and on talk radio like this. And I say that because the parameters, it seems, AFC team, what do they need in return? And how much does Rodgers have in just saying, yeah, I'm going there, trade me here?
I think the AFC team qualifier is really interesting, because if you're trading Aaron Rodgers and starting with Jordan Love in 2023, you're not winning a Super Bowl in 2023. That's off the table. Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. He was not ready to win a Super Bowl in 2008, his first year starting. So from a priority standpoint for the Packers, it's got to be less about conference and more about what's the best asset value return that you can get. What's the most assets you can get to start this reload and this rebuild that they are going to have to go on with a new starting quarterback, and look at it more from a 2 to 3 year window than what does 2023 look like, because they're not contending with Jordan Love in 2023, even really in the best case scenario. So I find that interesting. With that said, what are the teams you hear from? The Jets, as we know, have contacted the Packers. They're not the only ones. And the other teams that are the favorites to land Aaron Rodgers are the Raiders, the Titans. I mean, we're talking about a lot of AFC teams. If the Raiders sent 2 first-round picks and Darren Waller, Packers would probably jump all over that tomorrow. And a part of that, too, it's not just going to be picks. The Packers are very interested in players and receiving some key pieces that are ready-made for their roster right now to try to accelerate this rebuild. So a best package probably looks like some combination of picks and players.
How much do you think he wants to play with Davante Adams again?
Why wouldn't he? Right? I mean, you saw what the absence of Davante Adams meant in 2022, and how miserable he looked from afar when he was on the field without 17 to throw to all the time. So, they maintain, this is critical. They maintain a very close relationship even after the trade. Aaron Rodgers said that he helped facilitate the trade when Davante Adams reached out. They've posted on their Instagram and their social media. They're still chummy. And on the field, exactly what they can do together. So I have no question that he would welcome that situation.
Does that organization hate his appearances on McAfee, or do they not care at this point?
I don't know how you can. And the other thing, that if you're the Packers and you have Aaron Rodgers at a Pro-Am golf tournament, and he's openly flirting with other fan bases while under contract and just soaking in the attention, when you just paid this guy the richest deal in NFL history a year ago to come back and not only that, but internally have ceded so much power to a player. And that's very much against the Packer way. The Packers have always been a dictatorship coming out of that GM spot, which is one of the reasons they've been so successful for a very, very long time. And they've ceded that power to Aaron Rodgers. So all the things that they've done, how does it not make you cringe a little bit with some of the attention seeking that Aaron Rodgers has shown over the years and especially of late? So it's they'll never say that. The Packers have been over backwards to say nothing but the right thing with Aaron Rodgers ever since the summer of 2021 when that rift was created between him and the organization, primarily Brian Gutekunst. But no question that internally, I mean, it's got to make you cringe.
Ryan, how legit is the Nathaniel Hackett lure that the Broncos apparently tried last year? Within an hour, the trade was official for Russell Wilson after Rodgers announced he was staying. And then, of course, he's now the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets.
Well, from Aaron Rodgers' standpoint, it's definitely legit because as much as we know that he'd love to play with Devontae Adams again, Aaron Rodgers was nothing but glowing about Nathaniel Hackett during his few seasons here as offensive coordinator. From the gold zone, which is what Nathaniel Hackett calls the red zone, to his ability to package ideas and game plans creatively in team meetings and offensive meetings. He was a big fan of Nathaniel Hackett. So just like on the surface, there's no question he'd like to be reunited, throwing passes against Devontae Adams. No question that he would have no issue with having Nathaniel Hackett in his headset again.
Do you think there's a wild card team that no one's throwing out there?
There always is, right? I mean, any time there's a situation like this, there's going to be teams that you don't know. And so much of this is who makes sense on paper. I mean, who needs a quarterback, who might be motivated to not only take on Aaron Rodgers, but the circus that can involve Aaron Rodgers from time to time. But the bottom line is that he is a 4-time MVP. And all it takes is one team to think, yeah, last year was bad. It was his worst season, but he's Aaron Rodgers. We can fix Aaron Rodgers. We're the team to do that. It only takes one team to be enticed by that. So no question, there's going to be more teams involved than what we all know of.
Well, and one follow-up on what you just said, is he in the mindset right now to go and fix someone else from a leadership perspective? Because if Aaron Rodgers walks into the Jets locker room, let's say, that's a stand-at-attention moment for those young teammates of his that here's a first-ballot Hall of Famer coming in. But do you feel like he's in a place where he's going to go somewhere new and want to lead young guys?
Well, that's a big part of this, too. It's not just learning potentially a new playbook, but being in a new culture as someone who, entering his age 40 season, is going to be much, much older than many of the teammates that he's around, and being able to immerse himself socially and chemistry-wise with a new group that are in an entirely different age demographic. And that's something that is, just as it was with Brett Favre late in his career with Green Bay, there's been an increasing divide between Aaron Rodgers socially with, he's got his guys, Randall Cobb, Mercedes Lewis, David Bakhtiari. Those are his guys, and they're his guys for a reason, because he has a lot of chemistry and institutional social involvement built up with them, but they're all older too. I mean, the older guys. So that is a fascinating part of that we just don't know.
What does the research for a darkness retreat look like as you try to figure out what he was doing and what all that entails?
Man, I had so many questions. Like, let's just go to the practicality of the matter. Like, how do you not, you're eating, how do you not make a mess on yourself? Use the restroom.
Right.
I have never before in my life, proudly until now, considered how another man wipes. But now, I mean, you're in the dark.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
Right? You gotta wonder. So
these are all important questions.
Potentially 4 days of that too.
Right. Yes. 4 days. Do you use the bath right after you use the restroom, or is that like? There's all kinds of just things that in my career I never thought that I'd even have to consider. And 4 days of darkness. It's not. I don't know where you guys stand on that, but I can't imagine myself being surrounded by nothing but pitch black dark.
Yeah.
For 4 days. I'm pretty sure that would actually make me go crazy.
I told Chad, I would be like, if he was like, hey, you want to follow along and actually cover me doing this, I would love it. I don't think I would tap out though before he would. Absolutely.
Man, this is so made for the Twitter era too. You just have like
oh yeah.
I guess the cell phone light wouldn't be conducive to pitch black, but just have live tweets hour by hour of what is pitch black like.
Rodgers did describe it to McAfee, saying you're given a chance to acclimate in the light to know where your things are and the bathroom is, and then they shut the lights off, and then you're in the darkness. And I'm thinking, now if I'm in my house, I could navigate pitch black and feel my way out and kind of know where things are.
Yeah.
But you're telling me you're going to give me an hour in a completely strange place to figure out exactly where everything is? I mean, I am walking into everything. I'm just walking straight out with my arms like this everywhere I go, trying not to faceplant.
This is where Aaron Rodgers' photographic memory is really, really important. Not, maybe the toilet is like a safety and the bathtub's like a blitzing linebacker, and he just kind of goes into that mode.
Imagine the squinty eyes of Aaron Rodgers as he emerges from this.
The light.
Yeah. Wearing a sheet.
Yeah.
Ryan Wood has been
saying
our guest.
Packers was the vision. And I'm coming
staying.
back.
I'm staying.
I'm not leaving.
Hey.
Is the shadow in a G or is it not in a G? That's the real question.
Yeah, there you go.
What color smoke are we looking for that's going to come out of this house to know what team he's decided on?
Man, you've had a whirlwind of coverage over the last several off seasons with all this. Thank you for the time and the perspective, and I'm sure we'll be catching up as the Packers make up their mind as well as Rodgers.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime.
Yeah, appreciate it. @by Ryan Wood is how you can follow Ryan on social. Again, Packers beat writer for USA Today. We'll switch gears, Chad. Coming up, SEC Hoops headlines.
Good friend of the show.
Dane Bradshaw will join us. We'll give the headline in the SEC today, which is involving Alabama basketball.
Yep. We'll ask him about that.
And, I mean, at the top, it's a free-for-all right now in the Southeastern Conference and what we could see come tournament time. Dane Bradshaw joins us next on OutKick 360.
Another edition of the Trey Wallace Podcast. Happy to be joined by SEC Network analyst, ESPN. He does it all. Peter Burns joins us this afternoon. Peter, what's up, buddy?
I'd be doing a lot better if I wasn't 30 minutes late from the podcast and if I wasn't having to do it from like the meeting room at my gym because of the chaotic schedule. But again, it's just it never, when you got a 5-year-old and 3-year-old, all you got to know is that chaos is going to ensue in your life, and it has to.
It's just another day for the Burns household, man. You're all good, buddy. And look, there's been chaos not in your life. There's been chaos around the SEC in the last week or so. We've got Texas, Oklahoma. Kind of always figured they were going to reach that agreement and be able to join the conference early in 2024. But you look at it now and everything that has to happen between this week, and stuff has been going on behind the scenes, but scheduling, getting these guys ready to go for 2024 to get here. That's why I think spring meetings are going to be so big. But your takeaway of Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference a year early right when the new ESPN deal starts up.
Yeah, Trey, that was the whole deal. Like, it felt like we could really get into kind of what I considered college football 3.0. Like, college football 1.0 is what we grew up with. Like, old school football, just the way it is. College 2.0 or college football 2.0, I feel was like the pandemic and then the start of the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness. And I feel like college football 3.0 starts in 2024. Not only do you get Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, but remember, we get USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. Then you've got the expanded college football playoffs. So it kind of felt like all of this meant like, hey, in 2024, we're going to have a brand new kind of sport, frankly, and especially postseason. So I'm fired up, and it means really a different level for the SEC. Like, now we're not going to have divisions, which sucks, by the way. I'm not a fan of that. I understand why they do it, because it should, in theory, give you, a guaranteed at least 2 teams in the college football playoff every single year. But this conference is good enough that, hey, I mean, the 3rd ranked team should always be good enough to get in as well, too. So, I mean, I would have stuck with East and West, but it helps with the scheduling a little bit more. But man, I'm fired up for it. I mean, it's but here's the deal. I'm not sure if Oklahoma and Texas are really fired up for it, because I'm not sure how good they're going to be once they enter game 1 of that 2024 season.
That's what's going to be the interesting part, because we're going to get Arch Manning in the Southeastern Conference to start things off. Now we'll see how he is during his time in Austin, see where he's at. But it does put up that point where, okay, they might not be as settled in as maybe they think they are in 2 years when they join the conference compared to where they are right now. And Venables trying to build his program, Sarkisian trying to keep things on track there. I know it's an advantage, Peter, to get them in the conference, but they might be joining the conference and hanging around that middle of the pack. It's not going to be just straight, okay, we're to the top.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, we just saw the difference in the top of the SEC and the top of the Big 12 in the national championship game. I mean, there's a pretty big damn difference, right? And I think that gap is only getting bigger. Now, I think that might be a little bit of an outlier because it was such a butt whooping, but still, yeah, I mean, the fact that if you're not reigning supreme in that conference, I use Texas as an example right now, and you can't beat the Texas Techs consistently. You can't beat the Baylors consistently. Well, what makes you think that you're going to be able to go into, Athens, Georgia, or Tuscaloosa or Baton Rouge and have a whole lot more success? I don't necessarily buy that.
It is almost tournament time. OutKick 360 rolls on. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. And Chad, friend of the show, Dane Bradshaw of SEC Network. He joins us.
Former Vol, SEC Network analyst, always delivers for us. Dane, I'm looking on Twitter right now at what's trending, and number 1 trending topic is Ukraine. Number 2 trending topic is Nate Oates. Number 3 trending topic is Brandon Miller. Number 4 trending topic is Tuscaloosa. This is not a great story for Alabama basketball, and I don't say that lightly. This is obviously terrible news. This is something that's been going on throughout the season, as we know with the Darius Miles story. It's a difficult one to cover, but when you see this news today, what are your immediate thoughts about what's gone on in Alabama this season with a great basketball team that may be the best in the country right now?
Yeah, well, probably like a lot of you guys, first thought was, how do we not know this detail sooner?
Yep.
And then you get the quote from Nate Oates, who I really like a lot. I have a lot of respect for. If anything, people really think it's refreshing because he's not scripted, but that can get him in trouble at times because he kind of just shoots from the hip a little bit with his comments. So when he says wrong place, wrong time, maybe it's not quite that simple. But I just so happened to be listening to the Feinbaum show here, and they had the Alabama reporter, forgive me for forgetting her name, but that was covering the case for AL.com. And with that hearing today, and from what I learned, was it wasn't quite as simple as what I thought either. Brandon Miller dropped Miles and the shooter off at the club. He didn't want to go in because the line was too long. Gets a text later that's from Darius Miles, says, bring me my heat, of course, with his gun. And so he circles back and does it. Now, did they obviously try to prove, or I'm sure they asked questions like, did you know why you were bringing the gun back? But if I'm a teammate, you would like to think you're not in a car with somebody with a gun. But if it's registered on him, he has a gun, he has it. And then when they say, hey, man, can you swing back and bring me my gun? It's not as if he's saying, so I can go kill somebody or, hey, let's go get this, or whatever. And so it's, to me, I can, I'm open to hearing more details about it and allowing Brandon Miller's side of the story to be told on this, as opposed to him just bringing the gun and saying, here, y'all go kill somebody. Because it doesn't sound like that was the case either. Because if you're Brandon Miller, maybe it's, well, what if I didn't go return Darius Miles' guns that he owns, and all of a sudden my teammate Darius Miles gets killed because he can't defend himself with a gun? And so, again, I'm not defending the situation. I'm not trying to be naive or oblivious, but by no means is my, I'm learning this at the same time as you guys are. I just, like I said, finished watching the show. So I've got no interest in trying to see the star players stay on the court. This is much bigger than basketball. And certainly the most important thing is the victim involved and her child. But I do think that, Brandon Miller's side deserves to be told in this, as opposed to, it just being like, oh my gosh, he's an accomplice. But, by law, apparently he was not.
Well, I think they're going to have to tell his side of it now, because the questions are going to come pouring in. And based on what Nate Oates has said, Dane, they knew about this January 15th. So, it's February 21st. So the details have been there. We're learning about it through the preliminary hearing today, through testimony of law enforcement. And, I think the details either from Miller or from Nate Oates need to be exactly what they knew and why everybody's okay with how it went down from Miller's perspective.
Yeah, and I think you guys would agree from a PR standpoint. And again, I'd love to hear Nate Oates' side, the chancellor, the AD. Like, if you know that this is going to come out and these names are going to get revealed at the hearing, maybe they didn't know what the hearing date was going to be and they thought the season would pass. I don't know. I'm not going to assume the worst on them. But just from a clear PR standpoint, don't you kind of try to get ahead of this a little bit that says, hey, he and maybe another teammate were there that night, and we have done our due diligence on the situation. We've investigated it and the cooperated with police, and they've not been charged with anything, even though they were present there that night, and we won't have any further comment. Like, then it's not as big of a shock to everybody that, wait, like, they were there. And so, I don't know, that's my thought. You guys agree? I feel like you can get ahead of it a little bit, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Well, at least be prepared for the question. Know this hearing's happening. You know the facts, I'm assuming, of the case. And I'm reading it in print and I'm not seeing his body language, but just the words in print come across as defensive. I can't be there with them after practicing games at all times. And, the guys are going to go out and they haven't done anything wrong. And I'm thinking you've got to start with the seriousness of the situation and talk about the victim and sort of go from there. It's like, now all that out there, Brandon didn't know what was going on. Maybe he should have thought twice about just giving him his possession back, but he didn't. He's a young guy. He's learned from it. There's so many ways he could have done this that would have come across better. Dane, I just think the response from Oates makes this worse on Brandon Miller and everyone, and now it's kind of forced probably a second statement from the university and from them at some point, right?
Yeah, I think there will be, and I agree that there should have been a more prepared statement. And that's another thing too of not to make light of it by any means, but in basketball we talk about know your personnel, right? You got to know guys' strengths and weaknesses. And if you're an AD or a chancellor at Alabama, you know that Nate Oates, as great and down to earth as he can be in front of people, he's loose-lipped. So in a serious manner like this, doesn't that maybe tell you, like, hey, let's make sure we put some guardrails on this to make sure we protect him in this situation, as well as our university, to have a more prepared statement. So as opposed to, look, if you have a coach that is going to give a one-word answer or is going to have his own prepared, that you're like, hey, he's got it. We don't have to worry about it. But in this case, they certainly should have, and I'd be surprised if there wasn't another statement that comes out, because this it is. I mean, I think it's shocking to everybody. I just, you guys have covered sports more in depth and longer than I have, but football, basketball, like this deep into a season for the, let's just number one, number two in the country, whatever, top team in the nation, top player on the top team in the nation, being involved in something like this late in the season. I can't recall a comp to this.
Dane Bradshaw with us. What do you make of how they've handled it to this point on the court, given everything that's gone on and the challenges they'll now face moving forward as the SEC tournament and NCAA tournament are on the horizon? And this is under the assumption that they're moving forward with exactly what Nate Oates said. They're not having any discipline whatsoever.
Oh, yeah. On the court, I think they've handled it extremely well. Darius Miles, while he was a member of the team, he was kind of in and out, taking leave of absence, hurt here and there. So like it wasn't from an on the court chemistry standpoint, while it was a huge distraction, but on the court, that can be your release and therapeutic to everybody. And so they've done a phenomenal job just performing as a team. And, look, those guys inside the locker room certainly knew this story before any of us did. They talk. It's not like anybody on the team is just now finding out for the first time that Brandon Miller was there. And so in one vein, you say, look, they've already kind of been playing through this, but now with the media attention and scrutiny and everything that's going to come with it, it just brings a whole nother set of distractions. And I will say this, you might not like Nate Oates' comments. I do trust Nate Oates in keeping his team focused on the task at hand and blocking out the outside noise. I think he's got his locker room. And honestly, I'd be surprised if they dipped at all on the court if they play their entire roster as we know it today.
So Tennessee and Texas A&M tonight. Now it's two ranked teams. Crazy to see that there's still some question about.
That's what I thought I was coming on to talk about when you texted me. I was just coming in to talk Tennessee hoops.
Well, Dane, we know that you have extensive experience as a courtroom reporter, so we wanted to bring you on and talk about that as well. You watch a lot of court TV, I'm sure.
Right.
But no, A&M hosting Tennessee tonight. Two ranked teams now that A&M's the top 25, but still question marks about A&M's resume for the NCAA tournament, which is crazy considering they only have two SEC losses. And they may win the outright SEC championship this regular season. They're right there with Alabama right now, one game behind them, and still have a game left against them. What is it about Buzz Williams' coach teams, and specifically this A&M group, to where now 2 years in a row, we've seen it to a lesser extent this year in terms of how late it happened a year ago to get hot, but they start out so bad. They have a bad early season schedule. They can't beat some teams they should absolutely beat, and then they get red hot.
Yeah, and last year was a little too late. This year, they got things fixed much quicker. I mean, it was right after Christmas time where they all took a holiday break and came back with a new mindset. They tweaked some lineups. They figured out their identity. But I had them earlier in the year, and let me tell you, A&M was one of the most hyped up teams because they were bringing so many guys back from last year. Yes, they lost one of their best scorers in Q Jackson, but with all their returnees and the transfer guys, it was like, this is their year. And I'm sure you guys weren't watching, but I had them at the Myrtle Beach Invitational in one of those early season tournaments.
You are correct. I was not watching that one. I watched a lot of early season basketball. Didn't catch that one. Sorry.
That's right. They were nobody else was either. But I tell you what, they look pitiful, and they were the biggest disappointment in the SEC in non-conference. And they've been the best surprise in the SEC come conference play. And so you credit Buzz Williams for keeping his locker room and all the changes and adjustments they've made. But it is, when people say, how the heck are they not, a high seed, and who could even fathom them being on the bubble? Well, look, they lost some tough games early on. They lost to teams like Wofford, but there's no question they're an NCAA tournament team now. And if anything, they'll be an extremely dangerous one, because let's say they get a 7 seed or whatever it is, man, anybody that's been watching basketball knows they're playing more like a 3-4 seed than they are 7, but body work is going to make them in a good position to upset a higher seed.
I think even when Tennessee was blowing out Texas and getting to number 2 in the country, it's easy for people on the outside that watch the program to say, well, it's a Rick Barnes coach team, so they'll disappoint in the NCAA tournament. Doesn't matter how good they are right now, they're going to disappoint. But now that they've struggled a little bit, Dane, I find myself still watching the team and thinking, similar thoughts to when they were playing really well, that I don't really know how much has changed in terms of expectation. It's a team that's going to play great defense most nights, but that could struggle to score. And if they struggle to score, they could lose in the first round, or they could piece 3 or 4 great games together like we've seen this season, and they could be in the Final Four. Has anything changed in your mind over the course of this year with this group, given they've been down the 2 starters this last stretch where they've been losing some games?
Yeah, they do need to get healthy. I think when you look at back to last year when they would have those off shooting nights, a big point of emphasis for Rick Barnes coming into this season was we've got to be able to play inside out. When the shots aren't falling, we've got to be able to hit the high post, have a guy that we can dump it down to on the block. And to me, that's been more disappointing from an inconsistency standpoint than the shooting, is just not knowing, is Kamwa going to be your guy? Is Plavsic going to be your guy? And Awaka comes in. And when Awaka comes in, I like him, but I'm almost mad because that means one of the veteran guys isn't performing the way you need him to, right? And so, and that's, what Rick Barnes said, look, we got to be able to, have more of a paint presence. But you're spot on, because you look at the top 10 right now. I mean, is Tennessee scared of Alabama? No. Kansas? No. I mean, Virginia, they barely beat Notre Dame, I believe it was, the other night. So everybody's vulnerable up there. So you, as a Tennessee fan, you try to remain optimistic and say, we can beat any of those teams ranked ahead of us. But then you look behind you and say, you know what, not only can 12 through 25 beat us, but so can 26 through 50. We've been upset by some unranked teams. And so, the defense does travel, though. But I tell you what's been interesting, early on in conference play, they didn't play down to their competition. I mean, they were smacking teams. And if you weren't clearly a really good team that could hang with them, then you were getting beat by 20 plus. And they've lost that edge a little bit. And some of that's just the depth of the conference play and teams kind of having more film and all that stuff. But this used to be a team this year that you thought, hey, they're going to beat the teams they're supposed to beat and win a couple that they're not supposed to. And that's why they're going to get a 1 or 2 seed. But now they're starting to lose those Florida, Vanderbilt, those sort of games. And as you and I were texting, the dreaded 4-5 seed, just end this regular season fast so they can hang on to this 2-3 seed.
Kentucky got a big one last weekend over Tennessee. Where do you put Kentucky right now on the tournament bubble, Dane?
Yeah, they'll be on the right side of the bubble. They'll make the tournament. What's really helped them is, for fans maybe not as familiar with these quad 1 wins, like they were 1-7 against quad 1 teams. But then as a couple of those teams, like Texas A&M, for example, I believe Arkansas also, those were like at the time considered quad 2. But the better those teams have done, they've now become like a better quality win. So I believe Kentucky now is 4-7 against quad 1 teams. And they've won an extra game, but it's more about the teams they already beat doing better and paying it off for them. And so that's helped them behind the scenes, so to speak. And that they're fixing some things defensively. That, like, I think long term, big picture, there's still going to be a lot of criticism. People still aren't going to love Coach Calipari's offense. They're tired of hearing about next year's recruiting classes. They've got Oscar Tshiebwe National Player of the Year, and people are wondering why is he not performing better. And so those questions will still be there. But I think you got to try to compartmentalize a little bit if you're Kentucky and just say, you know what, let's just rally around this team that has been through a lot this year. They haven't given up. And if they can make the tournament, they'll be a really dangerous 8-9 seed and see if they can't make a run. I believe it was 2014 where they ended up being a really good 9 seed and stealing that 1 seed spot of Wichita State at the time and got themselves to the Final Four.
So, Dane, 2 teams that I want to believe in because of their head coach and their style are Auburn and Arkansas. But I don't know what to think of either team right now. Arkansas got hot just like they did a year ago after a slow start, cooled off a little bit here. What do you make of both of those teams? And if you're taking one to maybe do some damage come tournament time, which team is it?
Arkansas's got the most upside. I think they'll have the higher seed. They're the more talented team. They've got great size with Black at point guard, who's been phenomenal, a freshman. But they've got Nick Smith. This was a guy that was the most heralded freshman in the country that didn't start the season. He was having knee management issues, plays for a few games and plays really well. He was SEC Player of the Week, but then goes back out with the knee. And it was a really weird situation. The kid, things that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. But he goes out to LA, where apparently that's where, the agent is or whatever, where he's getting third-party advice, and that's where he's working on his knee. And everybody outside the program is saying, there's no way that kid's coming back. They're all in his ear saying, come on, man, 2 more months and you'll be a projected lottery pick anyway. You don't, for what? And you certainly thought, hey, if he's not back by February, he's not coming back. But he comes back to campus and he starts working on his knee. And then you start hearing rumors about him practicing and all that. And now he's back. And so this kid has huge upside. If you look up his stats right now, nothing's going to jump out to you. But when you watch the game, you will see that, wow, this is a guy that can take over a game that might give you that 20 to 30 or big time night on to advance you to a Sweet 16. So he really is. He is a weekend difference maker for Arkansas. They could make the tournament and be gone in that first weekend. But with Nick Smith healthy, and right now they're having to backtrack a little bit because putting him into the lineup when they've been so used to playing without him, it comes with a little bit of growing pains and adjustment. But it's worth it. The end will justify the means because he's a guy that can get you to the next weekend.
Could be a wide open SEC tournament, Dane. It'll be a blast.
Man, it's going to be awesome. Yeah, it aesthetically has not been the most pleasing basketball in the SEC this year. It just hadn't. Everybody, for the most part, all the teams' defense is way ahead of their offense. Yep. And, there's been some clunkers out there. But, man, to be this deep right now and to have 8 teams projected to be in and Vanderbilt starting to creep up into the conversation, the storylines at the SEC tournament are going to be huge because I mentioned Nick Smith, but all the bubble teams that you have, there's going to be a ton of teams with a ton to play for to where even, it might even be some of those Wednesday night games, which usually are the ones that nobody's paying attention to. But if a Mississippi State, for example, is a Wednesday night team in that first round, but they have hopes, then there's tournament teams everywhere.
Dane, we're 2 blocks from the arena where the tournament's taking place. We'll have to get you in studio when you're in town. I'll shoot you a text.
That'd be great, man. Hopefully I know off-the-court breaking news before that interview request.
No doubt.
Bone up on all your legal knowledge before you get here. We'll have a full test for you when you come on. I'm kidding. We'll talk basketball the whole time.
Good talking with you guys.
Yeah, man.
Good seeing you, Dane.
Good to have
Thanks,
you on the show again. Dane Bradshaw there, SEC Network analyst, will be on the call for Tennessee, South Carolina this coming weekend. Of course, Tennessee and A&M coming up, and we've got some other news on the other side of our break. We've got an update from the judge in the Darius Miles case involving Brandon Miller from earlier in the show. That's next on OutKick 360.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. Preston Withrow with you. 6th and Peabody, our location, Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine. The judge has denied bond in the Darius Miles case, and it will now go before a grand jury. So that case progresses.
That is not uncommon in a capital murder case,
right,
to my understanding.
Yes.
To what limited knowledge I have about the court system, I know that that is not uncommon.
And then from there, we'll see if it will proceed to trial based on the preliminary hearing that took place today, and then what will be presented in front of the grand jury.
Look, I understand Dane when he says, like, we need to hear more of Brandon Miller's side, and we need to hear better things from Nate Oates and a better explanation and more from here. I agree with all that. It's just real difficult for me to get past. This guy was sent a text to bring a gun late at night somewhere, brought the gun, and that gun was used to kill somebody, to kill a single mom. I can't get past those facts of the case.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know what would the defense be that anyone you know called and said, I need my gun right now, and you bring that gun to that person and that gun is used in a murder, where you come back and say, I didn't know anything bad could possibly happen with that gun that was requested late at night to be brought back to me, or that the intent was bad.
Yeah.
You know the intent is not good, right? This is not a 9 a.m., hey, you use my gun to go skeet shoot, and I need it back because I'm going to go shoot at the range today type text for a gun. So there's going to have to be a lot of convincing / realistic talking about what happened in all this for me to change my stance on Brandon Miller's got to go. Anyone involved with this has got to go. I'm not going to go as far as say Nate Oates should be fired, but I do think, and Dane even said it, Nate Oates stepped in it with what his comments were, and he should have been way more prepared. If this was going to be their stance all along, knowing about this.
And they've known about it.
They've known about it for over a month now, that they were just going to ride this out and let him play. How are you not more prepared for an answer to a question about it than what he said today?
Well, and the details, not just from Alabama, but it's clear that law enforcement's also okay with whatever Brandon Miller's story was. And that needs to be conveyed to everyone now, because the questions are going to start pouring in based on the preliminary hearing, the details that came out today from law enforcement and their testimony. Chad, a Duke fan created a fake Tinder account and then catfished Kamari Land from Louisville, and then printed out the DMs from the Tinder chat on poster and presented it at the game. The sign of the student section, it features the screenshots of the conversation from the fake Tinder account. That is putting in a lot of effort.
That's next level. I love the smiling face on the kid,
it's got
too.
He's got the address on here of Land, much more.
The kid is so proud of himself. They're smiling ear to ear as he shows off the DMs, which is pretty funny. We had Dan Dockich on yesterday, and he said he's tired of the lack of creativity at Indiana, where the students just chant F whatever the team is.
Yeah.
And there's no creativity in that, and it's dumb. And I mentioned the Dukies are known for getting creative. They do their research on the best players. They know exactly what the weaknesses are. They know girlfriend issues. They know everything about it.
It's everyone's weakness.
And this is, that's true. Since the dawn of time, it's been everybody's weakness. But they know exactly what the issues are, and then they attack it. This is creating an issue for an opposing player. Now, I wish you would have saved it for a team better than Louisville, because they're god-awful.
It makes me think.
I think they've won 3 or 4 games all season.
This makes me think there could be other accounts out there.
Could be.
Or other players out there that are responding to the same account.
4 games. Yeah, Davey says they've won 4. Louisville's won 4 games. I'd save it for like North Carolina on the road to end the season and get into that arena, and then maybe bring out the DMs for one of their players. But, whatever. It still worked.
I wonder how much, at what point do you have to create the account in order to begin the catfishing? Like how many weeks, months? Was this like before tip-off? Was this?
Well, we talked to someone who's pretty famous, and they told us that, which is a pretty good way to go about it, that any message you get from a really attractive female, that out of the blue, you believe it's fake.
Automatically.
Like if you go automatic into this is fake, someone's trying to catfish me or trap me, that's a good way to think about it. When you just get, you got to really do your research to make sure this person's real and actually asking you a question and not trying to trap you.
So do you think this?
That's a pretty good way to go about it.
You would use like a 7 out of a 10 instead of a 10 out of 10 in terms of attractiveness in order to catfish said player?
That's next level to say I'm not going to put the hottest girl in this profile. Just someone within this guy's range. The team does have 4 wins. That's it, after all. So she can't be a 10. Got to be more like a 6 or 7 that I'm going to put on the screen.
You can join us at 3 o'clock Eastern tomorrow for OutKick 360 across the OutKick network.